Maybe there's something I didn't think was necessary to tell you.
Pernell Roberts was the kind of man Hollywood rarely knew what to do with. On screen, he played Adam Cartwright on Bonanza with calm authority and quiet strength, the kind of actor audiences trusted the moment he appeared. But off-screen, he was something far more complicated, a man driven by principles so firm that he was willing to lose everything rather than bend them. He didn't play by Hollywood's rules, didn't chase fame, and didn't stay silent when he believed something was wrong. That honesty made him one of the most respected and most misunderstood men in the entertainment industry. What many people don't know is that behind his composed exterior, Pernell kept a mental list of people he genuinely could not stand. Not because of petty jealousy or wounded pride, but because of deep clashes in values and character. There were 5 names on that list, 5 actors whose behavior conflicted so sharply with everything Pernell believed in that he never forgave them. Their stories reveal a side of classic Hollywood that the polished publicity machine worked hard to hide. If you enjoy learning about the real stories behind television's golden age and the stars who weren't quite what they seemed, make sure you subscribe. There's so much more to explore, and the truth behind these legends is often far more dramatic than anything written in a script. Pernell Elvin Roberts Jr. was born on May 18, 1928, in Waycross, Georgia, a small southern town where the Great Depression had left its mark on nearly every family. He grew up as an only child, raised by his father, a Dr. Pepper sales manager, and his mother, a warm and encouraging woman who recognized her son's creative spirit early. While most boys his age were drawn to sports or outdoor adventure, young Pernell gravitated toward music and performance. He played horn in the school band and took part in church events, not because he was pushed into it, but because it felt natural to him. Those early experiences quietly planted the seed of something that would one day take him all the way to Hollywood. After high school, Pernell chose what seemed like the sensible path and enrolled at Georgia Tech to study engineering. But the rigid world of numbers and calculations left him cold. He felt no connection to it, no fire. In 1946, he enlisted in the United States Marine Corps and served for 2 years. Even within the structure of military life, he found ways to hold on to his creative side, playing tuba and horn in a Marine Corps band. When his service ended, he enrolled at the University of Maryland, where performing in student productions awakened something deep in him. Acting stopped being a passing interest and became a genuine calling. He made the bold choice to leave college and pursue the stage professionally, a decision that took him to New York City in the early 1950s, carrying little more than determination in a suitcase. He enrolled at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts and spent his days studying his craft while taking whatever odd jobs he could find to survive. It was a hard life, but Pernell never wavered. In 1952, he landed his first stage role in The Man Who Came to Dinner, a modest but meaningful breakthrough. From that moment on, he stopped chasing recognition and started building something more important, a career rooted in honesty and craft. He threw himself into classical theater and quickly made a name for himself. His powerful voice, intense presence, and complete dedication to every role earned him a reputation as a serious actor, one who could command a stage without effort. He performed in productions of Macbeth, The Taming of the Shrew, and Romeo and Juliet at the New York Shakespeare Festival, and audiences took notice. By the late 1950s, Hollywood had taken notice too. In 1958, Pernell made his film debut in Desire Under the Elms, appearing alongside Sophia Loren in Burl Ives. Even in that company, he held his own. That same year, he stepped into the Western genre with The Sheep Man and began appearing in popular television westerns like The Virginian in Gunsmoke. He was building something real, one role at a time. Then came 1959, the year everything changed. Pernell was cast as Adam Cartwright, the eldest son in NBC's Bonanza. The show became a massive hit almost immediately, drawing millions of viewers every week and turning the Cartwright family into some of the most familiar faces on American television. Adam was the voice of reason, the thoughtful, moral center of the family, and Pernell played him with quiet conviction. Overnight, he became a household name.
But beneath the success, something was gnawing at him. The scripts felt too simple to him, the moral lessons too tidy, and the character too narrowly written. While the rest of the world celebrated the show, Pernell felt he was drifting further and further from the kind of acting he truly cared about. He had built his career on depth and authenticity, and he couldn't shake the feeling that Bonanza was asking him to trade those things for popularity.
He was never the type to keep quiet about it either. He clashed regularly with the show's producers, pushing for better writing, more complexity, and more honesty in the stories being told. He was openly critical of the show's treatment of Native American characters, which he saw as disrespectful and lazy. To him, Bonanza may have been beloved by millions, but it wasn't challenging anyone or saying anything that truly mattered. That bothered him in a way he simply couldn't ignore. In 1965, at the absolute peak of his fame, Pernell Roberts walked away from Bonanza. It was a decision that stunned Hollywood. He turned down the money, the fame, and the security to go back to the theater and rebuild his career on his own terms. It took time, but his patience paid off. By the late 1970s, he found real success again as Dr. John McIntyre in Trapper John, M.D., earning critical praise and connecting with a whole new audience. But through all of it, Pernell never changed who he was. He remained direct, principled, and completely unwilling to pretend otherwise. And that brings us to the 5 actors he couldn't stand and the reasons behind each falling out. The first name on his list was Michael Landon. In the early seasons of Bonanza, the two men had what looked like a genuine friendship. They shared a real bond on set, talked about the craft, and worked together with what seemed like mutual respect. But as the show grew into a phenomenon, that balance shifted. Landon's popularity exploded, and he became the face of the series, the network's favorite, and the audience's darling. Where fans saw warmth and sincerity, Pernell began to see something different. He noticed Landon's ambition quietly reshaping the show around himself. As Landon began writing scripts and eventually directing episodes, the pattern became clear to Pernell. Little Joe was always the hero. The other characters were pushed further and further to the edges. For Pernell, this wasn't about jealousy, it was about principle. He believed stories should serve truth, not personal ambition. According to people who were there, the breaking point came when Pernell confronted Landon directly and told him plainly that he wasn't trying to make the show better, he was trying to make himself bigger. After that, the friendship was over. They only spoke when the script required it. What deepened Pernell's resentment was Landon's public image, the carefully crafted persona of a gentle, spiritual, deeply feeling man. Pernell didn't believe it. To him, it felt like a performance that never switched off, a manufactured version of depth without any of the real thing. When Pernell left Bonanza, Landon said nothing publicly, not a word. That silence, to Pernell, said everything. Years later, when someone asked him about Landon's success on Little House on the Prairie, his response was short and sharp. He said it was the same thing, that Landon was still playing cowboy and still playing saint. One sentence was enough to show how much that bitterness still lingered, long after both men had moved on. The second name was Dan Blocker, and this one carried a very different kind of pain. Pernell and Dan had once shared a genuine and deep friendship. Both were classically trained. Both believed that even a television western deserved to be taken seriously. They admired each other's work and shared a common belief that storytelling should be honest and meaningful. For a while, their bond was one of the most real things Pernell had on that set. But as Pernell's frustrations grew louder and his conflicts with the producers escalated, Dan chose a different path. Rather than stand alongside Pernell in his challenges to the show's writing and its treatment of Native American characters, Dan became the peacemaker, the one who smoothed things over and tried to keep everyone calm. To most people, that might seem like a reasonable choice, but to Pernell, it felt like betrayal. He believed Dan had the intelligence and the moral awareness to speak up and chose comfort over courage instead. Pernell later said that Dan had the heart but not the spine, that he chose comfort over conscience. It wasn't said with anger, it was said with sadness.
The moment that truly broke things between them came during a day of filming when Pernell walked off the set in protest over what he called a degrading script. Dan stayed and finished the scene. When they spoke afterward, Pernell told him simply that he'd had a choice and that he always had a choice. After that, the warmth between them faded into polite distance. Dan never attacked Pernell publicly, but he never defended him either. For a man who valued loyalty as deeply as Pernell did, that silence was the deepest wound. The third name was Chuck Connors, the towering star of The Rifleman. Their clash didn't begin on the Bonanza set, but it quickly became one of the most intense conflicts of Pernell's life. To the public, Connors was the perfect Western hero, magnetic on screen and commanding in person. But at a charity gala celebrating legends of Western television, a very different version of him appeared. Witnesses described Connors treating the entire event as though it existed purely for his benefit. He snapped at staff, ignored people without acknowledgement, and gave orders as though everyone around him was beneath his notice.
Pernell watched quietly at first, growing more unsettled with each passing moment. The final straw came when Connors sharply scolded a young assistant over something trivial. When the two men crossed paths backstage, Pernell didn't hold back. He accused Connors of being a fraud, a man who cared more about his own image than the people who made that image possible. Connors fired back, calling Pernell a bitter quitter who couldn't handle the price of success. From that point on, there was nothing between them but cold resentment. In private, Pernell described Connors as all hat and no soul, someone who looked like a hero but lacked the essential qualities of one. To Pernell, Connors represented everything he despised about Hollywood's hollow surface. The fourth name was James Drury, the star of The Virginian, and this feud was rooted entirely in ideology. Pernell had never hidden his political beliefs. He spoke openly against racism, condemned the Vietnam War, and regularly criticized Hollywood for its silence on social justice. James Drury stood at the opposite end of that spectrum entirely. He was firmly conservative and believed that entertainment should offer people escape from the world's problems, not confront them with more. Their views finally collided in the 1970s during a televised panel discussion about the future of television. Pernell spoke with his usual bluntness, calling television westerns empty comfort food designed to soothe audiences rather than challenge them, and accusing networks of cowardice. Drury pushed back hard, arguing that viewers didn't want lectures and that entertainment had no obligation to carry a political message. The exchange became genuinely heated, the room divided, and by the end the two men refused even to shake hands. What troubled Pernell most deeply wasn't Drury's conservatism itself, but his silence during the civil rights movement. To Pernell, staying quiet during that period wasn't a neutral position, it was a choice, and it was the wrong one. He later told a friend that Drury wasn't just an actor, but a voice for keeping things exactly the way they were. That was something Pernell could never accept or forgive. Away from the feuds and the professional battles, Pernell's private life told its own complicated story. He married 4 times. His first marriage to Vera, a theater professor, began in 1951 and gave him his only child, a son named Jonathan. He loved Jonathan deeply, but the pressures of his career and his restless nature made stability at home difficult, and the marriage ended in divorce in 1959. His later marriages also ended the same way. Those who knew him well said that while he valued personal freedom fiercely, emotional closeness didn't come easily to him. He kept his deepest feelings guarded, building invisible walls even around the people who cared for him most. The greatest loss of his life came in 1989, when Jonathan was killed in a motorcycle accident at just 38 years old. The grief broke something in Pernell that never fully healed. He rarely spoke about it publicly, but people who knew him said the loss followed him quietly for the rest of his days, settling into everything he did. In his later years, he found some peace with his 4th wife, Eleanor Crissell, whom he married in 1997. They remained together until his death, and she gave him companionship and calm in his final chapter. But even with that love beside him, the weight of everything he had carried through his life never entirely lifted.
In his final years, Pernell stayed far from Hollywood's social world. He avoided fan conventions, rarely gave interviews, and spent his time on music, activism, and the people closest to him. He battled pancreatic cancer privately, facing it with the same quiet resolve that had defined his entire life. On January 24, 2010, he passed away at his home in Malibu at 81 years old, the last surviving member of Bonanza's original cast. He left behind an estimated fortune of $10 million, though money had never been a measure of anything. At the height of Bonanza, he was earning nearly $10,000 per episode and was among the highest-paid actors of the 1960s, yet he walked away from all of it without hesitation. While millions watched him on television each week, he was marching in Selma alongside Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., not as a celebrity seeking attention, but as a man who simply refused to look away from injustice. Pernell Roberts could have stayed on Bonanza, built an empire, and lived comfortably in Hollywood's warmth for the rest of his life. Instead, he chose integrity over applause, purpose over popularity, and honesty over ease. He was difficult in the best possible sense of the word, a man who held himself and everyone around him to an uncompromising standard and paid the full price for it. His legacy isn't just Adam Cartwright or Trapper John. It's the idea that sometimes the most courageous thing a person can do is simply refuse to become something they're not.